Hi, I'm Dave Annell. Welcome to episode 16 of Setting the Record Straight, in which I try not to get too worked up about yet another case of really bad digitisation by our friends at Ancestry. Worcestershire is one of those English counties which has always been a bit underrepresented as far as online access is concerned, and as I have a few Worcestershire connections, specifically in Evesham, I was pleased to see the launch of a new Ancestry database last year, covering Worcestershire Church of England baptisms, marriages and burials, or rather, as it's Ancestry, we've got the familiar 4 databases for the price of one, with a general baptisms, marriages and burials database running up to 1812, and separate databases for marriages from 1754, and one each for baptisms and burials from 1813. When you dig a bit deeper, it soon becomes clear that what we're actually dealing with here isn't the parish registers themselves, but the bishop's transcripts, copies of the registers made annually from around 1600 and sent to the diocesan registry in Worcester. The aim of bishop's transcripts, or BTs as they're usually known, was to provide a backup in case of loss of damage to the original registers, as well as serving as a basic form of fraud prevention. There's not much point in falsifying an entry in the parish register if the bishop has a copy in his archive without the fake marriage or baptismal entry. And it's not too difficult to see how useful these records can be to family historians. So it's an important collection of records, particularly, as I say, because of the relative dearth of online material for Worcestershire. Unfortunately, however, this is yet another example of Ancestry making an absolute dog's dinner of a perfectly good set of records. Let's have a look at the database and see if I can explain what I mean. We'll start with a basic search for the surname Moulton, which is the main Worcestershire surname that I'm interested in. Just run that search, and we can see that it brings up just a few entries. The marriage of Nancy Moulton is one of mine. We'll have a look at that. So here it is under the weddings. It's the 4th one here. It's Edward Dyson marrying Nancy Moulton by licence on the 11th of July. Now, the record has been assigned to the parish of Evesham. Well, in fact, there's no such parish. The town of Evesham was divided between the parishes of St Lawrence and All Saints. And if we look at the top of the page, we can clearly see that this is a record from All Saints Parish. It would have been nice if Ancestry had deemed to capture this information because it's fairly important, but we do at least have the name of the town, which is going to be very useful with a more common surname. Now, if you remember, when we saw the results here, there were actually 2 entries for Nancy Moulton's marriage, and we'll come back to that in a minute. So we'll go back and we'll try a slightly different search. I'm going to use Wildcards, and I'll put in MO*L*N*. So that should hopefully bring up some pretty good variants of the surname Moulton. We run that search. Well, in fact, we get probably a bit too many to work with. We've got 242 hits here. So what I'll do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to limit this search just to baptisms. And we'll run that search again. And this time it's a little bit better. We've got 86 results. And if we scroll down the list, we'll see there's an entry here. We'll find it. An entry for William George Moulton. And this is actually the man that I'm interested in. And it tells us here that the parish has given us St Lawrence, Worcestershire. Again, if we look at the actual entry, we can see at the top of the page, there's the entry for William George, son of William and Anne Moulton. Might actually say Moulton. It's not quite clear whether it's Moulton or Moulton, but anyway, we found it. But what we can see is that quite clearly it says Evesham St Lawrence, not just St Lawrence, but Evesham St Lawrence. So again, they've just captured part of the information, this time the dedication of the church rather than the town. But this is my man, and I now want to find baptisms for his 2 sisters, Sarah and Marianne. Well, despite quite a lot of searching, I haven't actually found the record for Sarah's baptism yet, but a search for Marianne eventually turned up something interesting. The way I approached this, because the basic searches weren't working, I just put in Marianne in the first and middle name field, leaving it on exact, left out the last name, and then put in the year of birth, 1787, plus or minus a year, which is information I knew to be true about Marianne. And if we run that search, we can see that there's a fairly promising looking entry here, the fifth one down. Marianne, well, it says Moulik, M-O-U-L-I-K, that famous Worcestershire surname Moulik. The parents are listed as Am and Anne, but I can pretty much guess that that's a misreading of WM for William. Transcribers clearly having an off day, but as I always say, I'm not that bothered about bad transcription. As long as the search engine is flexible enough and the high-level data is handled properly, you can usually find the entry you're looking for, as I have done here. Because when we view the actual entry, you're looking here, we can see the entry for Marianne. Trying to find it. There it is, Marianne, daughter of William and Anne Moulton. Well, you can see what's happened with the surname. I'm going to forgive them here because the surname is, the final N of the surname has been inserted above the rest of the name there. And we can see also we're back in Evesham, St Lawrence. But did you notice the event place for the information? Let's just go back to that entry. It just says Worcestershire. And when we look at the record itself again, we can see that in the place where it should give the name of the parish, it says not stated. But it is stated very clearly, not just in the big capital letters added by the archivist here, but on the original entry itself in the parish of St Lawrence, in the borough of Evesham, in the county and diocese of Worcester. It's all there. Now, if this was just a one-off, I could just about allow it, but it's not. This page is one of 30,280 pages of Worcestershire bishops' transcripts where no parish name has been recorded. And yet the names of the parish are right there. I mean, I haven't checked every single page, but I have no doubt that the original records held at the Worcestershire Archives are all properly catalogued and that the necessary information is recorded. 30,000 images. I have no idea of how many individual records we're dealing with here. Perhaps more than 100,000, perhaps twice that, even more. I really don't know. In the majority of cases, we can find out relevant information by viewing the image for ourselves and then scrolling up to the top of the page. But that doesn't always work. These BTs were often written on large sheets of paper or vellum, and when the records were digitized, they tended to cover the larger sheets in multiple shots. So you need to be able to browse from one image to the next to find the relevant section of the document. But I'm sorry to say that you can't always do this here. Here's a search I did for the burial of a man called Henry Penny. I know that he had died in Evesham in 1793, and knowing what I now know about this database, I'm not going to be stupid enough to use Evesham as a search term. I'll just put in the basics. I've just got his first name, his last name, and the year of death. When we run that search, we'll see we only get one hit. Again, we've got this event place just as Worcestershire, which is a worrying sign. And when we view the image, we'll see the entry right down the bottom right here. He died, was buried on the December the 11th, Henry Penny. And when we scroll up the page, we can see that this is actually cut off at the top. So it's the second image, or at least not the first image. There may be several above it, but it's the bottom section of the document. So the obvious thing is to view the previous page in the data set. But we can see straight away that this isn't the same document. It's not the same record. So we could try going forward a page just in case they filmed them out of order. But again, this is not the right record. This is the reverse of the entries for a parish called Barrow, and that's the entries for that parish. So what can we do? Where is the other part? Well, here's a little trick we can use. If we go back to the page we were looking at, when they filmed these documents, they allowed an overlap. So the records at the top of this image should also appear at the bottom of another image. So if we note a distinctive name from near the top of this page, and Thomas Rock looks like a good candidate, we can see what happens. So here's my search then. I put in Thomas Rock and I put in 1793 in the year of marriage. This was a marriage record, and we'll view that, and we've got two results. If we click on the top one, which says St Lawrence, Worcestershire, we can see that yes, indeed, it is the record for bishop's transcripts for the parish of St Lawrence, Evesham in 1793. And again, they've just captured the name St Lawrence at the top. The other part of this document is in that large collection of 30,000 plus pages, which has no parish attached to it. And do you remember the 2 entries we had for the marriage of Nancy Moulton? Well, that's another example of exactly the same situation. I don't know about you, but I feel that we're being shortchanged here. Surely it's not too much to ask that the commercial company whose job it is to digitise these records does an efficient job, one that allows us, the paying customers, not just to find what we're looking for, but to understand what it is we found once we found it. I think I need to go and have a little lie down now. Thanks for listening. I'll be back soon with another episode of Setting the Record Straight.